Okay, good evening. Thank you all for coming to the last lecture of the 2014-2015 school year. We are the Des Moines Student STEM Speaker Series, the Des Moines S5. The purpose of our speaker series is to host speakers in STEM fields who share their work and describe the education and training that they have received with students. Our goal is to educate students about interesting work being done in STEM areas and different career paths to which STEM education can lead. Our website is located at www.dms5.org. We will continue our speaker series next year, so please check our website for details and feel free to sign in. Present tonight are Des Moines S5 members Arjun Ganga, Gabriel Minzer, that's me, Evan Easton, Nathan Ryder, and Jack Wall. Here is our speaker for tonight, Mr. Ben Silbermann, CEO and co-founder of Interest. He lived in Des Moines, and he attended Indian Hills and Roosevelt and Central Academy, and now he lives in San Francisco and works on Pinterest. There he is.
Can you guys hear me? Or?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Arjun, did you want me to say something, or did you want to ask some questions?
And go through the questions we gave you. That's all right.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, guys. I was really excited when the group reached out, just because I went to school. I went to Crossroads and then Indian Hills, and I was just really excited that there were students that were kind of helping support science and tech education. So they sent me a list of 9 questions, and I'll just go through them. But if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hands. So the first question was, when did I get interested in kind of science and technology? And I guess for me, there were 2 parts of it. Ever since I was a kid, I was really into science. I was into biology and engineering. My grandfather was a scientist, and I always really looked up to him. And then I was really lucky to have great science teachers, especially in junior high school. I really remember, dissecting a frog in 7th grade. I just thought it was a really cool field. So for me, it's something I was always interested in, and I pursued it kind of through college as well. Is this all right, Arjun? Is this what we're looking for?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's great. Just keep on going.
All right, question 2. What did you do well in high school and college, and what did you do not so well that you wish you would have done differently? So in high school, I did all sorts of stuff. I did science. I was on the high school debate team, which is pretty fun. I was in the orchestra. I was in the band. I didn't play any sports. I don't know. I was just never very good at sports. I kind of wish that I had. And so I think one thing that was good in high school is just a really great chance to try out all sorts of things, that whatever you're curious about. And so I think that part went really well. And actually, the thing that I wish I did more was I actually wish I just would have tried more and more stuff. There were all kinds of cool activities that I never tried out. I didn't try to go out for the cross country team, and a lot of my friends did that and had fun. I had 2 sisters that both kind of went to Des Moines high schools, and some of them were in things like swing choir, and they really loved that. And I guess I wish I would have done more stuff like that. One thing that I always would want to make sure that someone told me if I could do it again is, I think that you can kind of have the time in high school and college to do whatever you want to explore. And so sometimes there's a lot of pressure to pick really fast or only do things where you think you're going to be pretty good at them. But I think the more stuff that you try out, the more you find out what really gets you excited every day. And you shouldn't really be discouraged if you're not very good at it at the beginning. So I think that's something that I wish I would have. I wish I would have tried more stuff out. Cool. So question 3 was, how did you kind of utilize skills in science and tech and apply them to business? I think that for me, when I was in college for a long time, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. But then on the side, I was really curious and interested in technology. So I worked on lots of fun technology projects. And I guess for me, at least, Pinterest didn't start out with the idea that it was going to be a big business. I founded it with a friend named Evan, and we kind of just made it as a toy for us. And even though that sounds really uncommon, now I get to talk to a lot of folks that have started companies, and a lot of them started by just building something for themselves that turned out to be really useful for a lot of other people later. So, I talked to a guy named Drew who started the company Dropbox, which a lot of people use and have heard of. And he started out just trying to solve a problem for himself, which was, how do I get all my files to sync across the computer? I know like a lot of businesses aren't that way, but I think one thing that's great about science and technology is that something that you make for yourself can end up benefiting lots and lots of people, whether they're kind of close to you or really far away. And so I think that's how those two things intersected, at least for me. If I started again, and I was back in high school or college, even though a lot of attention is given to people who are doing things in the computer industry generally, I think there are a lot of fields. I think biology is a really exciting field right now. And if I were to place a bet where a lot of the most exciting companies are going to be in the next 4 to 10 years, I definitely think the intersection of biology and kind of computer science is where a lot of really great, interesting kind of innovation is going to happen. So I take a lot of biology classes. The next question was, are STEM and entrepreneurship incompatible? How do you combine the fields? I don't think so. I mean, I think they're totally compatible. It's funny, when I was first working in lab, I worked in a lot of academic labs, and there's some academics that really see kind of the role of research as just furthering pure science. But more and more, lots of labs are thinking, how do I invent new stuff that can help a lot of people in the world? So I really think that kind of knowing the basics, especially in fields like math, I think computer science is incredibly useful, is incredibly valuable. That said, I also think that I've gotten a ton of value from taking classes outside of science and technology as well. And so there's a lot of focus on it because I think in the US, the statistics are that science and technology isn't always taught as well as it could be. But I also think, art, design, classes that teach you how to write well, how to speak well, turn out to be really, really useful. A lot of people ask me, what were some of the most formative activities for me in high school? And for me, actually, high school debate turned out to be really useful because I was super, super introverted, super quiet in middle school and high school. And I think that was an activity that helped give me confidence to do things like public speaking, and it became useful pretty much every part of life. So even though science technology is amazing, I definitely wouldn't ditch all your other classes in pursuit of that alone. Cool. Next question was, describe the inception and growth of Pinterest. So Pinterest is actually about 5 years old now. And one kind of funny thing about Pinterest is it wasn't the first kind of company or product that I tried to make. I tried to make a whole bunch of different products. It was the third or fourth one. And it really started because I loved collecting things as a kid. I used to collect insects when I was little. My co-founder Evan collected things like rocks and stamps and coins. And we really just thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to put collections on the computer? And so that's really, really how it started. And at first, not that many people used Pinterest. That first year or so, even my friends weren't really using it. But we just sort of stuck with it because we thought it was really cool, and we thought if we could get more and more people to use it, the service would get more and more valuable because you could see more and more collections. So I think around 2012, so about 18 months after we'd first started it, people people just started to use it that we didn't know personally. So I remember really vividly, we were looking at the people using it. And we were asking each other, like, hey, is that your friend? Is that your mom? And for the first time, there were people that we didn't know. And I remember that being a really exciting moment. And I think from then on, more and more people joined. And they basically heard about it from other people that were using the service. So today, there are tens of millions of people. They're all over the world. The company has a lot of folks. It has 500 people now. About 200 of them are engineers, and the rest are designers, business people, and writers. And it's just been really exciting. We feel really lucky that it continues to grow, and there are some people that continue to find a lot of value in it. So that's sort of the really quick version of the story in a nutshell. Next question was, what's one piece of advice that I would give students today? I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that the longer you stick with stuff, the better you get at it, which sounds like such basic advice. But again and again, I find that all of my friends that are the most successful are people that just really stuck with things and really practice to get them better. And I don't know, that sounds like the most basic advice in the world, but I think the longer that you work hard at things that you enjoy and things that you care about, just the better that you're going to get at it. When I got to college, I felt like, geez, there were already students that were so good at something that maybe it was too late for me to start. But that feels like ridiculous now when I look back on it. Like, I was so young and I had so much time to do whatever I want. And so there's just ever something that you want to try, I would encourage you to give it a shot. And don't be discouraged by the fact that early on you might not be good at it, because the longer you work at things, the better you get. Like, don't think people are just born really good at math or science or technology or even sports. Like, I find people that just stick with sports, they end up getting really, really good. So that's the advice that I would give folks. Just keep on going. Don't stop using it. Cool. Were there any disadvantages of being a student in Iowa? How did you overcome the limits to your education? Was transferring to California difficult for you? I don't think there were any disadvantages, except that it's really cold in the winter compared to California. I don't know. I was really lucky. I had great teachers, and then I think the coolest thing now is, like, when I was a kid, if you wanted to find stuff out, you had to go to the library. But now, anybody that can get on the internet pretty much has access to the same information everywhere. And so, no, I actually don't think there are any distractions. There are any like real limitations to growing up in Iowa or anywhere for that matter. There are people at the company that grew up all over the world. Some people grew up with very, very little access to things. And every day it's pretty amazing because we all ended up working at the same spot wherever people grew up. So I don't think there are any limits. Getting to California was honestly it was a pretty easy switch because there's good weather the whole year round and there's ocean out here. But I do miss the Midwest. My parents are still they're in West Des Moines. I have one sister in Indiana. I have one sister in Missouri. And so I get back pretty often. And there's a lot that I really in leaving have come to appreciate a lot more. The people are really, really nice. They're super supportive. And they're just excited to see people succeed really genuinely, no matter what they end up doing. So it's been really fun to come back. Come back and visit. Okay, last question. How do you think STEM education in high school should change to better prepare students for the real world? So I was thinking about this. I mean, one thing I remember from high school was a lot of my friends that weren't very good at math or science, they kind of opted out pretty early on. Like they struggled in maybe algebra or geometry, and then they were just like, I'm not a math person, and they kind of bailed out on it. So I think that's a huge mistake. Sometimes you just need things to be taught in a different way, or you need to spend a little bit longer on it. And so I think one thing that education should change is that it's really tracked pretty fast. And at least when I was in high school, there was definitely a track for people that didn't really care about learning it. And a lot of people opted into it because it was hard. And I think we should do something to help those students out because it'll be really useful. The other thing that I think always got me excited personally is I was always just really motivated by what I could do with science and tech. And so the more that my teachers gave me more applied problems, the better things were. So I remember I wasn't really excited about calculus until actually my physics teacher showed how useful calculus was in doing kind of interesting things with physics. And so I think just showing people exactly like how those subjects can help you in a very practical way is super exciting. So those were the questions that you guys gave, and I wanted to make sure there was just a lot of time if people had specific questions that I
Oh
could.
yeah, if we could take some audience submitted questions now, that would be great. Okay, the first one is, what was the demographic of Pinterest users and how has that changed? Why do you think this happened?
Sure. So I think early on, a lot of the users were actually from the Midwest. They were from people that I grew up with. We had a lot of people who joined that were excited about like design, interior decorating, fashion, and you still see a lot of that in Pinterest today. Those are still really strong categories. I would say two things have changed. One is there are a lot more interests that are represented. So if you're excited about motorcycles or tattoos or cooking, those are all things that are there now that weren't there at the beginning. So you can search for a whole bunch of stuff and you'll probably find good stuff. The second thing that's changed is there are a lot more users outside of the US, which is really, really cool. We want that to continue because I think the more people who use Pinterest, the more different interests they put into the system and the better the product gets. So it's a little bit where it came from and kind of where it is today.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, what are the best and worst things that occurs as a result of usage of social media online?
What are the best and worst things? Well, I don't know. I think that the best thing is that it makes it easier to stay kind of close to like people that you care about, and it makes it easier to learn about more parts of the world. There's so many kind of articles I've read that somebody posted, or kind of new things that I've discovered that I didn't know about. I love art, and I've like discovered so many new artists through things like Pinterest. I think the worst thing, there are two things that I think are kind of bad. One is like that old adage, like everything in moderation is really true. It's just really easy to be like addicted to your phone. And I don't know, it's just like really, it's really crazy. Like all the time I will go like to dinner somewhere and I see like everyone at the table just like on their phone. And that feels pretty bad. The other thing I think it's bad, especially for like younger people, is like people can just be like really mean on social networks and kind of forget that there's another person on the other side. And so I don't know. I just think that can be tough because like everyone's trying to figure out who they are, and if you have people that are really mean, it bums you out. You make people really depressed.
Okay, our next question comes from Nancy, the founder of a youth programming class. Her question is, as someone who runs a youth program, I feel like my tech school competes with soccer. How do I encourage a youth who are very good at tech to rethink his "I want to be a pro soccer player" dream?
Oh. So the question is like how to get students who want to play soccer to get into tech?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think like I don't think you have to pick either or so early in life. So one thing is that if you're good at technology, you can do it year round. You can do it when you're older, whereas I think most pro soccer players get done relatively early in life. I also think the odds are just a lot better at finding value in technology than in pro soccer. Although watch me eat my words and not be like the one pro soccer player who finds like fame and glory. But I don't think you have to choose. And as I said, there are awfully like long winters in Iowa that are cold. It seems like a good time to brush up on programming. The weather's not that great for soccer.
Okay, thank you. Our next question comes from a student. He asks, if one is to become a computer programmer, what skills would you recommend acquiring? And what programming languages would you recommend they learn?
Okay, well, I'm not a great programmer myself. I think that the best part if you want to be a programmer, is just probably to figure out something that you want to build and then just try to build it. Everyone I know who got good at programming, it was very rarely from just like studying programming books. They were just like, how do I build that thing? That's why I think so many people today who are great programmers got started because they wanted to make their own games. And that was like a really accessible thing. In terms of languages, I mean, I think what's cool now is you can program a lot of languages and see them like working on a device that you carry every day. So it's pretty amazing like how much easier it is to program stuff for an iPhone or an Android phone. I don't know, if I was a kid learning programming, I would just be really excited about the idea that I could make something and everybody who has a phone in their pocket, which is pretty much everyone, could use what I made. So I would probably start there. I've heard great things about code.org as well. It's just a great way to get introduced. And what's cool is you have really famous world-class people basically teaching you the principles of programming. You have Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg are literally teaching you, and it's free. So I think that's also a really good place to start.
Okay, our next question comes from Maisie. She asks, how did Pinterest change your life? P.S. My teacher loves your website.
How did Pinterest change my life? It's funny, it kind of took over my life, is what happened. It started as like this project with some friends, and now it's like my job. It's what I spend all my time doing. And I think that's one of the kind of cool things about technology. You can turn something that is a fun thing for you and sort of make it a solution. But yeah, it's funny. It's definitely changed my life a lot. It's changed my wardrobe. I have like lots of free Pinterest t-shirts that I wear all the time. But yeah, I feel really lucky about the journey we've been on so far, and I don't know, I'm really excited to see where it goes next.
Okay, our next question comes from a teacher. She asks, how important was your college choice, as in where you went to school, in terms of where you are now with your career?
I don't know. It's funny. I don't know if it was that important. Looking back on it, it seemed like the most important thing in the world to me at the time, especially when I was applying. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to get into this set of schools. But I don't know. I mean, I have friends from high school that did all sorts of things. They went to all sorts of different colleges. Some didn't go to college at all. And in general, the folks that found something that they were really excited about and they were willing to work at, that they could support themselves with, they all did fine. And some of my friends who went to college, they didn't do as well. So I don't know. I mean, I would focus more on what is it that you want to learn and how do you kind of keep learning and keep being excited about learning than stressing about the specific college that you go to. Some of the most successful people I know didn't go to college at all, actually. I'm not saying don't go to college. I don't want to be kicked out of the STEM group forever, but I also think if you can't afford college or you don't get into the one that you want to, don't think your life is over, because that's pretty ridiculous.
Okay, our next question is, what was the hardest thing that you had to go through on your path to where you are today?
What's the hardest? So I mentioned briefly that Pinterest is probably, it's like the third or fourth or fifth different one that I've tried, different product that I've made in technology. And I think the hard thing is that when you're trying to do something new that's not working out, you don't know whether you should just totally give up on it or you should just keep going and you'll get better at it each time. So for a while, I had left my job and I'd gone through most of my savings and I was like, maybe I should just bail on it. And that was really the hardest part of it, not knowing whether anyone would ever use any of these products. I also don't think, even looking back on it, there's a really easy answer. I feel really lucky that Pinterest did well. But the basic reason that I was able to work on it for so long is I had a lot of support from friends, support from my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, my family was kind of very supportive. And I think people need a support network around them anytime they're doing something where there's a good chance that they might not be successful.
Okay, next question. Can you talk about a time when you faced failure as a young adult or an adult?
Yeah, I mean, I failed all the time. I mean, we talked about all these like business things I failed at. I remember, I actually remember my counselor had suggested that I go out for the high school debate team, and I remember this really vividly because I went to the first tournament, and it was only other freshmen, so it was only other people who had never done it before, and I remember I finished like dead last out of all the participants, and I was just thinking like, wow, I'm definitely in a very objective way the worst. Uh, and I finished like dead last, I think, for the first several tournaments. I didn't win any of the debate rounds, but I remember that so vividly because sometimes when you're a freshman, you're like, well, I'm the newest at it, but I was just restricted to the people that were also freshmen. I remember feeling really bad about myself. But it was really fun, and we stuck with it and had a lot of fun doing it.
Okay, the next question is, you mentioned biology as an emerging area previously. In what ways it is emerging? Yeah, if you could give an example, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, what's so cool about biology is like when I was a kid, I read a lot of science fiction books about what then it was more called like molecular biology, now synthetic biology would do for the world, but it was all like sci-fi. It was super expensive to sequence DNA. There weren't computers that could design complex genes, and it's just one of those fields where all of this technology is caught up really, really fast, and now they're doing things that only a few years ago would have been totally unimaginable. So I remember reading as a kid a book about the Human Genome Project, which was this huge project, multiple years, incredibly expensive. And now you can get your own genome sequenced, and I think in a couple of years you'll be able to do it for $50, $100 personally in a very, very short amount of time. So I just think it's one of those fields where there's a whole lot that we don't know, and then there are a bunch of technologies which are going to enable people to invent things really quickly. And it's not unlike the way that personal computers got really, really fast, and then the internet came along. So you had the convergence of two big technology trends that then created an opportunity to build a lot of interesting products and companies and technologies on top of them. So I think it's going to be a pretty exciting time.
Okay, our next question is, what about Pinterest motivated you to continue to work on it? Why did you stop working on your other projects?
Well, I think that there were two things. One is I thought it was actually really cool. There weren't that many people using it, but I remember thinking, oh, this is the best thing that I've made so far, and I always had ideas for how I can make it better. And then once people started using it, that feeling is really addictive, that feeling of working on something and having people use it and kind of get enjoyment and get value out of it. And I think as soon as those two things were true, like I was really hooked. I just wanted to see how far we could take it. But that feeling is really exciting. And as I said, like I really remember the first time people started signing up that I didn't know personally. For a while, it was literally just like the people that I would constantly email and be like, have you tried it? Have you tried it? And they were the only ones that tried it. And we were so excited when people that we didn't know were using it for the first time. So I think that feeling was a really exciting one.
Okay, our next question is, can you briefly describe the business model behind Pinterest?
Sure. So the business model is advertising. And basically, what most people do on Pinterest is they're looking for things that they want to do in their future. So it could be activities for school. It could be how they want their house to look. It could be what they want to cook. And a lot of those things are enabled by companies that make products or services. And so we get money from those folks. They put in advertisements, and we try to show people very, very relevant advertisements. And we're still pretty early on in trying to figure it out. So it's funny, even though Pinterest is a pretty big company, bigger than I thought it would be, I think we still have a lot of work to get done before it's the kind of company that'll be here for 10, 20, 30 years.
Okay, thanks. Our next question is, what has been the most interesting thing with your involvement in the STEM field that has allowed you to do? What's the most interesting person you have met and why?
Man, that's a hard one. The most interesting person. Well, I mean, I think that in terms of STEM, like it's just really cool to meet people who I find the most interesting people are people that combine like a love of technology or engineering with another discipline at the same time. So I got to meet some of the folks that work at places like Pixar, where you have these great writers and animators and storytellers, but they also kind of work hand in glove with people that are great at engineering and rendering these insane 3D models. And I remember thinking that was really, really cool. I got to meet Elon Musk once. Elon Musk made the car, the Tesla. He made SpaceX, which is this company trying to send a rocket to Mars. He's definitely like a character. Like people talk about him like he's like a real life Iron Man, Tony Stark type. And I think it's like a well-deserved reputation. So I think those are a couple people that I found really inspiring and exciting to meet.
Okay, our next question is, after coming up with the idea of Pinterest, how did you move past just the idea phase and find the confidence to launch it?
You know, it's funny, there wasn't much gap between when we thought of it and we started making it. So, you know, we drew it out on a piece of paper and then we just started prototyping it. And then when we thought it was something that we would use, we just let it out. There wasn't like a big decision moment. I mean, our reasoning was like the worst that'll happen is no one will use it, and no one will use it anyway if we don't let it out. So might as well put it out there. That's something that's different with software products. I mean, with hardware, or with some other fields, like you really can't let things out until they're 100% ready to go. Like if you're building a medical device or if you're ordering parts from all over the world, like you better be pretty darn sure because you've sunk a lot of cost. But a cool thing about software is you can put things out as soon as you feel like we'll be excited about it. And if no one likes it, no one cares, you haven't really lost anything. You probably learned something from getting that feedback, and you can make it better and put it out the next day. So I think that's like one of the most appealing things about software. You can just change it and adjust it day by day.
Okay, our next two questions are about the future of Pinterest. They are, how do you think Pinterest will change in the future, and what are your goals for the future of Pinterest?
So, you know, whenever I think about what we want Pinterest to do, one thing I'll always tell people is that we want it to almost feel like you open up a catalog and it's just full of ideas of what you could do with your future. Like it's super personalized, and every time you find something, you can kind of make it a reality. So if it's a product, you could buy it. If it's a recipe, you could cook it really easily. If it's a location, you could send it straight to your phone and get maps and directions to that place. If it's a show, you could buy the ticket. And I think we're really far away from figuring that out. So inside the company, we have a whole group of people that are just worrying about how do we show you things that you didn't know were there yet, but you'd really love them if you saw them. We call that the discovery team. And they build search engines and recommendation engines. And then we have another team that's always saying, if you found something you like, how would you actually make it part of your real life? And that team is called Do Team, because we say like, hey, we want you to go do stuff. And so they're working on like lots of projects to make that happen. So hopefully someday in the future, no matter what kind of device people are using, it feels like a really personal service that helps you make plans and make your life better.
Okay, thank you. A Roosevelt student asks, one, what did you do before Pinterest became successful, like recent projects? And the second question is, how did you enable Pinterest to become successful?
So what did I do before? So right before Pinterest, we were making an iPhone app. The iPhone was really new back then, and there weren't very many apps for it. And we thought it would be cool to put a shopping catalog on the phone. And that never got approved by Apple, and we never got to release it. And then before that, I wanted to make a trivia game. So we made a trivia game called Mighty Quiz. And it was pretty cool. Anybody could write a question, and then you could play trivia about any topic. Now there are some apps now that kind of do the same thing one's called Quiz Up. But it was a really fun project. Before that, I made an application with some friends to help promote his band. He was in this like indie band, and we wanted to make software to help him tour better. And that wasn't a very good business because indie bands have no money. And so you couldn't build a business off that. And before that, I made some software with friends to help you try your glasses on online. So my parents are ophthalmologists, and so we thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could have software to help people like fit and pick different glasses styles? Because one thing I had noticed was, when people go to the shop with glasses and they can't see themselves once they put the glasses on because they have prescriptions. So we thought, they'll just buy glasses online. So yeah, those were some of the things I guess I tried working on before that. There were a whole bunch of them.
Okay, our next question is, what do you do when you're not working?
What do I do when I'm not working? So I have 2 kids now. I have a 1-month-old who keeps me busy, and I have a 2.5-year-old. So that's pretty much it. Just taking care of my kids with my wife and work. It's pretty much all I do. I used to I still do, I really like cooking. I don't know, I think it's a really fun hobby. And then I like photography a lot. Before Pinterest, I took tons of pictures. I took a photography class in high school, actually at Indian Hills. And I remember thinking the dark room was so cool. They had that circular door to make sure no light came in. You got to work with all these flammable chemicals, which I thought was exciting. So I really enjoyed photography. I still do. Now just digital stuff, but I love photography.
Okay, the next question comes from Finn, a student. He asks, what is the most amazing pin that you've ever seen?
What is the most amazing pin? Well, I'll tell you, there was one pin that almost broke Pinterest. You guys have used Pinterest, you know that the pins they're all the same width, but they can be really high, really, really tall. And so someone thought it would be hilarious to pin this giraffe that is super tall. It's you have to scroll forever to get it off. And then everyone thought it was so funny that everyone kept repinning that. And so you would go to your feed and all you would see is the neck of this huge giraffe in everyone's feed. And no one knew what was going on. So we had to write something to automatically shorten it. But to this day, you ask people at the company, they know there's a piece of code for something called giraffe pins. That's any pin that's way, way taller than it is wide. But that came from that pin actually being this huge giraffe.
Okay, our next question is, what makes Pinterest different from the rest of your ideas, and why do you think Pinterest grew so quickly?
What makes it different? So I think some of those other ideas actually probably could have succeeded. I mean, I think the major difference was we built it a lot better. It's funny, I think going back through all those different things that I helped make, each one was better than the last one, even though none of them were successful. Some of that was because stuff that I had learned along the way about how not to do stuff. Some of it was because I found better people and teammates to work with. And so I think that any of those ideas probably could have worked, but honestly, having an idea is one thing, and then building it and making it real and making it really good is something different. So I think that was something that was really helpful. But I don't know, even today I think, geez, why isn't there some sort of trivia app where you can play and learn questions about any topic in the world and kind of get better and better. So I don't think that's a bad idea. I just think I didn't do a very good job building it in a way that it could spread and grow.
Okay, our next question is, in your opinion, how do we get more women into STEM-related professions?
It's a complicated question. It's actually one that we talk about a lot inside our company, because when we recruit, sometimes it's hard to find as many women as we'd want to, because the number of engineering graduates as a percentage of the total who are women is lower. And I think what's cool about STEM and education is it's starting at the very beginning. So I think the more kind of young women are encouraged and are excited about going into science and technology, the better. But I think that's probably not the only thing that has to happen. I think that also workplaces have to get just better about creating environments where they're not only like welcoming and encouraging to women, but also they're more flexible for women that want to start families over time. Because you see, not only are there fewer women technical graduates, but then they get to the workplace and a lot of women drop out of the workplace later. So it's a pretty complicated question, but I think one that a lot of people are trying and working on making better.
Okay, our next, this is actually a comment from Maisie. She's a 4th grader. She says, "You are very inspiring. My teacher last year got all of our crafts from Pinterest."
Awesome. That's great.
Our next question is, do you have visions of any other websites or applications that you might want to work on down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I have tons of stuff someday I want to make, but I think right now I'm just trying to stay really focused on making Pinterest great. I don't know. I think one thing that I learned in doing a lot of those other products was that, I don't know, it takes a lot of work to do like one thing well. There are some people that are able to do lots of things in parallel, but at least for me, it was super helpful to focus on making kind of just Pinterest the best version of that I could. And so I try to, except for family, really put as much effort into just making Pinterest work as I can.
Okay, our next question is, if you could suggest a series of steps for success in entrepreneurship, what would they be?
Steps for success. Well, I think the number one thing is probably to try to get a good team around yourself. I think, your chances of being successful if you have 2 people is much bigger than 1 person. And so finding somebody that you have skills that complement yourself, I think that's the number one thing. I think the number 2 thing is probably perseverance. Just kind of keep working at it until it works out. And perseverance doesn't just mean like don't give up, but it also means trying to put yourself in a position where you can work on things for an extended period of time. So it's a lot harder to make a business succeed if you have a very short period of time because you don't have any money to pay your rent, or you're under a lot of pressure to make it work right away. So I think trying to set yourself up in conditions where you can take a crack at something for a while and then pairing up with good people are the 2 most important things that I could think of.
Okay, our next question is, did anything in particular inspire you to make Pinterest?
Yeah, so I was a huge collector as a kid. I had this huge bug collection, which is kind of dorky, but I loved it. I think it started because I took a summer class on bug collecting at the Science Center that they were offering. And then Evan, who was in architecture school at the time when he started it, he also was a big collector. And so I think what inspired us was we thought, collections say so much about who you are, but there's no way to put them online and share those things with other people. And so that's how the idea was first born.
Okay, our next question is, other than the giraffe incident, do you have any difficulties with hackers or trolls on Pinterest? If so, what do you have to do to protect the site, and why would hackers want to get on your site?
So we do. We have a whole security team. We have a whole team that looks for like trolls. And I think that's just like the story of the internet. Like as soon as you make something, there are people that'll put up like negative comments or bad content or try to hack security. So usually what those teams are doing, it's crazy. It's like a real cat and mouse game. They're always like scanning to see where there might be vulnerabilities or where there are little loopholes. And then on the other side, spammers and hackers are always trying to test those loopholes. So they're always like trying to build systems to outsmart the other person. So it's actually kind of a fun team, even though it's pretty annoying when there's spam. I think we have a pretty good handle on it, like knock on wood right now, in terms of spam, but it's one of those things you have to always invest in to kind of keep under control.
Okay, our next question is, how do you recruit people to work with you, and what qualities make the ideal team member?
How do we recruit people? So early on, we recruited anybody I met. I put up ads on Craigslist. We got some of our first folks. I tried to recruit my friends out of their jobs. And the things that we look for, these days I really look for people that I think love Pinterest first and foremost. We want people that love the product and love what it could be. We look for people that are smart and are usually knowledgeable about at least two things in life. So a lot of our engineers love design. A lot of our designers love engineering. And I find when people know about two things, they're often like more creative and they're better at solving problems. I look for people that want to get stuff done. So like they're doers, they're not talkers. And so they can point to whatever they do, they actually get that thing all the way done. And you can usually tell, like a lot of these folks, whatever project they undertake, whether it's like a crafting project or sports, they actually get a pretty high level of proficiency, and they really drive that thing all the way to completion. And then I look for people that are nice, and that's just because it's more fun to work with nice people every day than to work with jerks. And so, try to get people that are all those things plus they're nice people to hang around with.
Okay, the next question is, what do you think the biggest difference is between the West Coast tech culture and the Midwestern culture?
What's the biggest difference? I don't know, that's a hard one for me to answer easily. I mean, one thing I've noticed on the West Coast is that people will really try out really crazy and practical ideas. And, there's a good and a bad on that. Everyone hears stories about like crazy tech companies that totally crash and burn because they were such a crazy idea. I remember, I don't know, I can't speak for all of Midwest culture, but I remember when we were starting the company and we were first raising money, like my mom was always asking me like, is this a loan? Like, why would they give you money? Like, they're very practical, like, questions. And I actually think there's a lot of value and strength in that. But the funny thing is, like, a lot of entrepreneurs out on the West Coast grew up in the Midwest. So there's a guy named Evan Williams who's famous for creating Blogger. He created Twitter. He has a new startup called Medium. He grew up in rural Nebraska. Mark Andreessen, who's a famous investor out here who created the company Netscape. He was born in Iowa, and I think he grew up in Wisconsin. Marissa Mayer, who's the CEO of Yahoo, I think she's also from the Midwest. So there are a lot of people that find a lot of success coming out here, and I think they're also, you don't have to move out. I think there are a lot of great companies that'll be found in the Midwest in the future. So, wait 1 second. It's going to go dead. All right.
Okay, the next question is the industry you work in cutthroat, or is there a camaraderie amongst competitors? Could you give some examples?
Well, the funny answer is it's kind of both. I think that a lot of people who start companies, they want to see other people that start companies succeed. And so one really cool thing about starting Pinterest is I've been able to meet a lot of other entrepreneurs, and they're always really helpful with their advice. Like, no one wants to see someone make the same mistake twice. And so there are groups that'll grab breakfast together, or grab lunch, or grab dinner, and just talk about how they can run their companies well. At the same time, I think that, when there are two companies in the same field, they'll often compete a lot because sometimes the first place company gets everything, and the second place company basically gets nothing. There's like an expression, there's no silver medal in technology. And if you think about it, like Facebook has 1 billion people, and no one uses MySpace anymore. Right now, there are two companies. There's Uber, which is like the taxi hailing company, and there's a competitor called Lyft, and they're always like really, really going at it. So I do think it's a very competitive industry. But at the early phases, when people are starting a company, they just want to see other people succeed. So it's a little bit of both in that way.
Okay, the next question is, when releasing apps onto the mobile app market, what legal agreements or parameters must you set up with distributors or the government?
Wow. Well, so, I mean, every product is different. Usually there are, 3 sets of rules that everyone has to follow. There are sets of rules that are created by the platforms themselves. So if you want to make an app for Apple or you want to make an app for Android, there are specific rules about how your app has to work. Apple approves all your apps manually. Google reserves the right to kick you out if they don't like what you're doing. The second set of rules, of course, are just general laws in the world. Like you have to kind of follow the letter of the law. And generally, that's pretty simple for most companies. As you expand globally, you actually have to keep in mind the laws for every individual country. And then the third set of rules, of course, applies to your specific product or business. So there are different rules if you're building things that say make medical promises, or you're trying to sell goods about what you can advertise and what you can't. So those are the three sets of rules that basically govern most of what people do.
Okay, the next question is, it sounds like your company works in teams. How do you create a good teamwork environment at Pinterest? And how do you balance team versus individual time?
Yeah, so teams are super important for us. There's a value that we have at the company where we say we like teams that can knit multiple skills and disciplines together. So generally, like every team has some engineers, some designers, often a writer or a community manager or a researcher, and they all work really together. I think to make teams work well, the first thing is you have to find people that are low ego and are good at communicating. Generally, like really high ego people are bad at being on teams because they want all the credit for themselves or they don't want to listen to other people. And so I think the best team members can hear other people's points of view and understand them, but can also make really decisive calls. So I think those are the big things when it comes to teams. I forgot, was there another part of the question? I don't remember.
It was, yeah. How do you balance team time versus individual time?
Oh yeah, it's pretty tricky. I think that sometimes like work is very solitary every once in a while. So funny, out here at Pinterest, like people are always asked to take a look at how much time they're spending in meetings versus how much time they have to work individually. And then we try to make it easy for them to focus when they need to like put their head down. We give them like really nice headphones so they can like drown out any other noise. Sometimes, especially for things like programming or designing, you just need to really focus individually. Yeah, it's a balance. I don't know if we figured it all out.
Okay, next question is, what do you think sets Pinterest apart from all other social media companies?
Well, I think Pinterest is pretty different. When I think about a lot of other social media, it's either about your past, like kind of what did you do, like what party did you go to, what did your vacation look like, or it's very real time. It's like breaking news. I think Twitter is very much about breaking news. Pinterest is weird because it's kind of about your future. It's like, what do you want your home to look like someday? What do you want to cook in the future? And so I think that makes it a very different type of behavior. You're less concerned with like how many people like everything you put up or how many people commented, and you're more doing it for yourself. I used to say Pinterest is much more visual than all the other platforms, but now a lot of the other platforms are more visual than they used to be. So like Facebook and Instagram, even Twitter has lots of photos. So I think that's a trend that all the platforms have now adopted.
Okay, the next question is, what kind of work do you do at Pinterest on a daily basis now that the company is highly developed?
It's not as developed as you might think. I spend a lot of time recruiting. We're always looking for kind of the right sorts of people. And I spend quite a bit of time like with kind of the people that report to me, so my managers, to make sure that I'm helping them kind of help their teams out. So I think of my job as like I'm supposed to like take barriers out of their way to make their job easier. And I think the same is probably true for like educators. Like, the principal's job should be to make teachers' job easier. The superintendent's job should be to make the principal's jobs easier if everything is working the right way. And then with any time I have left, I spend a lot of it working on the product itself still. So looking at the product, looking at data to see, is this product kind of working in the right way? Working with designers or engineers to try to design new features. That's the part that I kind of enjoy the most, and so I try to keep doing it.
Okay, the next question is, when did you first know that Pinterest was going to be successful?
I don't know. The funny thing is, like, this is gonna sound really weird, but I always think to myself, like, man, we have to make it better because otherwise everyone might just stop using it. And I don't know. I've always sort of been that way. I've always been like super thankful and happy for the folks that use it and enjoy it. But I've always in the back of my mind been thinking like we just got to make it better because technology is always like getting better. And that's something we tell the teams a lot, that if they get complacent and stop making things better, you know, people will find something better to use with their time. And so you have to really earn people's time and loyalty every day. Otherwise, you know, someone will build something way better than Pinterest, and everyone will start using that instead.
The next question is, what kind of phone do you have personally? And do you see kind of untraditional brands like Windows or Kindle Fire taking the phone market from the iPhones or the Androids?
So I've been a big iPhone user for a long time. And recently I switched to an Android phone. I got a Samsung Galaxy because I felt like I've been on iPhone for so long that I didn't even really know like what was cutting edge. And most of the world today still uses Android. So I was like, I got to use that. But today I think my heart is still a little bit more with my iPhone. I find it a little easier to use. But they're all like pretty amazing. Every day I can't believe that like phones can do what they do. Right now, I don't see Windows or Kindle taking the crown away from Android and Apple. I think they just have a huge lead, and they're getting better and faster and faster. And I also think a huge part of getting a new phone is what apps you can put on it. And so they have a really hard problem. They have to make their phones as good, but they also have to get all of these software developers to build all these cool apps. And the software developers don't want to do it because there aren't users, and then the users don't want to buy them because there are no apps. So they're in a really tricky spot. Now, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. Bigger towers have fallen down. So I would never like count on that entirely, but I would be very surprised.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do just a few more questions.
Okay.
As society evolves, what qualities do you think will become important for the success of new social media?
Societies of I don't know. That's like a big question. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Hopefully Pinterest will be I don't know. I mean, I think the cool thing about tech is people are always building new things. I think there'll be a lot more services that help you in your day-to-day with like things that are right around your physical location. I think that's taken a long time, but I think you'll see a lot more things that put you in closer touch with the physical world and help you kind of do all kinds of stuff in the physical world versus just having you focus on what you're doing on your phone.
Okay, we'll do three more. One is there difficulty in working with other foreign countries? Are there different rules or restrictions that they follow?
Yeah, there are different rules. I don't know if that's the hardest part. I mean, the hardest part is if you don't speak the language, it's harder to get really good feedback from users because everything is going through a translator. Like I'm a pretty intuitive person when it comes to products, so I'll just talk to people about, hey, what's working and what's not working. And as soon as you don't speak the language, that becomes harder. Oh, so that's another thing. I think you asked a while back, like, what should I have done more in high school and college? I think like learning more languages would be awesome. You could travel to more places and understand more cultures. So I would definitely do that.
Okay. If someone wanted to work for your company, how should they go about getting your attention?
Well, I mean, people can always send in resumes. I mean, the people that stick out are the ones that do something to show that they really understand what Pinterest is. If someone sends like a really generic resume, I don't know, like we'll look at it like everyone else is, but every once in a while we'll get someone who tells like a story about why Pinterest is important to them, and then another story about how they could make their product or service better. So those always really stick out, and I think that's common for pretty much any job. You want to sort of get people's attention. Another weird thing today, like almost every application is online, but the funny thing is, like if you send somebody mail, like it still gets there, and so in a weird way now, like writing letters is a really easy way to like stick out. It's like a really, not just probably for any job. If you write someone a handwritten letter, like it's really rare to get those. So I don't know. I would try that. I did all kinds of crazy things to try to get jobs. So I don't know.
Okay, our last question is, what are good ways to get students interested in science and technology outside of school?
Outside of school. I don't know. I mean, at least for me, like just seeing like potential of what science and technology could do to the future is what got me really excited. And some of that was like projects that I did, but some of it was, I don't know, like reading like goofy sci-fi books or watching sci-fi movies and thinking, oh, like why couldn't you do that someday? And so I don't know, sometimes I think there's like pressure when kids are young that they should read like really heady like academic stuff. But in my mind, if you just get so excited about learning about a subject, even if it comes from like playing games originally or movies or comic books or whatever, that excitement is something that is really important to just nurture and keep growing, and eventually they'll end up doing good things. It doesn't have to come from like a fancy textbook or anything.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you have any concluding remarks?
No, just thanks for inviting me. I know like it's like a little late over there, so thanks for maybe like missing dinner or something coming out. And yeah, I don't know, keep getting more students into science and tech. I think it's going to be good for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming, everyone. Don't forget to sign up for our email list on your way out. Thank you.